Hey, everybody, it's D, host of The Broken Brain, which is why I'm on The Broken Brain right now. This is your Monday mental health tip and the first mental tip of 2026. That's right, drink it in. A whole new year is beginning, and with it, all kinds of chances to be mentally healthy. Today's mental health short tip ties in with the episode that you're going to hear tomorrow, where I was able to interview Dr. Ian Gold, Dr. Joel Gold, and Sean King O'Grady, who's an award-winning filmmaker. They're the creators, hosts, and interviewers on the docu-series Suspicious Minds, analyzing how artificial intelligence is having an effect on society, mental health, and particularly delusions. The brothers Gold, Dr. Joel Gold is a psychiatrist, and Dr. Ian Gold is a philosopher. They've worked together for years looking at the effects of culture, movies, social media on delusion. And those things do tend to come in to play there in their book, Suspicious Minds. How culture shapes madness. They talk about what they call a sort of a Truman syndrome, where there are people who started to believe that they were living in a Truman Show type reality show, and that affects people when they go through delusions. Now, of course, the question is always, how much do these things prompt people to go into a delusional state when they may not have before, which is part of what they profile as it comes to artificial intelligence. You're probably seeing it in the news, a lot of stuff about what they're calling AI delusion, and how being stuck in the feedback loop with an AI program can, in some people, trigger delusional type of symptoms and literal delusions that will change their lives and hurt their mental health. Interestingly enough, and we'll get into more of this tomorrow specifically, but this is not just people who have a history of delusion. In fact, many of the people they profile had no significant relationship with any kind of mental health diagnoses or no mental health issues at all before having these experiences. So what is the effect of AI? Now, so I wanted to touch today just on a little bit of generally, and it overlaps specifically with what we talk about tomorrow, is how do we engage with a new technology? And the interesting thing I found talking to these three individuals is even after all their work, and they said this is the same for people who have run into delusional problems, as many of them do not abandon AI as a technology or a tool. For one thing, it's present. It's not going anywhere. The other thing is that it does do some work, similar to when the computer was brought about, calculators were brought about. And if we're looking at something like a tool like that, there are certain safeguards that we should use, especially when it is brand new. So I want to talk a little bit about how do we engage with those kinds of things. Culture certainly shapes the way that our mental health works. And if you go back in time, there has always been a lot of concerns and panic even, along with worship of any kind of new technology, new development, new anything. In my industry, you can see it with trends in treatment, different modalities that start to be effective. Everybody gets really excited about them, and you start shoving those things into everything you can, every form of treatment. I remember for a while, there was a buzz phrase that was coming out that was called evidence-based treatment. And that's still used, and you'd think you know what that means, that it just means treatment that is based on evidence. And that is where the theory and the term came from originally, is let's try to do what works instead of what we think works when we're doing mental health and addiction treatment. Now, the term cognitive behavioral therapy had been around for a long, long time, and I may have mentioned this story on the podcast before, but I had a boss, a psychologist, who ran the addiction treatment program for Davis Behavioral Health, which is a community mental health center in Davis County, Utah, as I was working as one of the counselors. And he liked to collect books on cognitive behavioral therapy for a particularly fun reason. He had a big shelf in his office that was full of these books, and he would pull them off sometimes in trainings. He'd bring them in and be like, hey, look, here's cognitive behavioral therapy for addiction. Here's another manual, cognitive behavioral therapy for obsessive compulsive disorder. Here's cognitive behavioral therapy for depression, cognitive behavioral therapy for anxiety. And he said the interesting thing is most of these pretty much 95% the same book. So that it's pairing up an idea with everything. Like, this is the wonder drug, so to speak, of whatever it is that it is coming out in. And one day I was sitting in a meeting, and he was a little late in the meeting. He comes bustling in. He sits down next to me, and as you do, kind of quietly, "Oh, hey, how's it going? Oh, yeah, that kind of quiet, muttering that you do when you're in a work training. I'm sure none of you out there do that. You sit there quietly and respectfully all the time. Anyway, so my boss turns to me, and he reaches into his satchel that he carried, and he pulls out a book. This is right during the height of the evidence-based treatment discussions we were having. And the book is called Evidence-Based Treatments for Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. This was the greatest day of his life, I'm sure. Be able to pull this out and be like, oh, geez. So the way that we look at things when they are developed is there's no industry, I think, that is free from this, and certainly the culture at large. And you can actually track this, where there is, oh boy, this is the best thing ever. At the same time, there's always pushback, contrarianism, and panic that happens. And you can see the extremes of both of these, like is usually the case, to be less healthy. I think I mentioned the episode when The Fork came out. There was a lot of societal and religious and other organizations that would push back and said, what is this new utensil? What do we need this for? And then there were people that said, this is great. This is the best thing ever. Now, in that case, it's a very benign thing we can laugh at, right? Cocaine, heralded the same way. Opioids, heralded the same way. Methamphetamines, the same way. Heroin, same way. When they came out, here's a wonder drug. At the same time, oh, this is going to destroy society. And I think we can see that some of those things have been maybe even more destructive than The Fork. When radio came out, newspapers were vehemently opposed to it and said that it was going to destroy both culture and the ability to do the news. Now, the newspapers did survive for a long time. Print media is in a bit more trouble today, although you can find newspapers and things out there, obviously, still. But the reason I bring that one up is there's a story we didn't get to in the episode where newspapers were so against radio, in particular the newspaper industry, that you may have heard the famous story of the War of the Worlds, where Orson Welles developed a radio program that has led to, of course, the story's been told a bunch of different ways, including Steven Spielberg made a movie about it, which is not a lot like the original. Anyway, he came on, and this story was being told in the way of sounding as if it was, hey, this is an experience that I, the narrator, am having or have had. Here's the reports of aliens that are, taking over the world. Now, the story that I had always heard growing up was that this was so good and so realistic it caused panic. The radio was so new that everybody thought, oh my gosh, this is really happening. What are we going to do? Getting out there and panicking, running around, whatever, to whatever extent. I have since learned that if you look at the history of that, there really was no mass panic to the degree that we've always been told there was. Where was that reported? The newspaper, right? And so you see there's pushback to anything that comes out. Now, on the other hand, going into the one-size-fits-all, this is great, I think we can see this. There are funny ways that we can see this with AI. I see it in like every platform or technology or software that I use. In every update is like, now we have an AI feature. And I'm convinced, and some of the people I know who work in IT have told me that this is true, that not all of that is really anything it maybe didn't do before. It either is an enhanced version of something it did before, or is some kind of something that technically meets the idea of AI or whatever. It's kind of like for those of you that use Zoom, I hope you're with me on this. Whenever there's an update, sometimes they just move where all the buttons are. I swear, there's no additional functionality. Some do, some don't, but some of the updates, of which are frequent, just seem to hide where things are. I think just so you notice that they're doing something. There's a psychological impact for sales in putting AI into everything, or claiming that you're putting AI into everything. But the way that it's being put into everything and the way that it's being pushed is, I think, one of the things that sets us up for problems, just like any new thing that comes into our lives. Particularly if you're like me and you tend to seize on to things, then it just depends. Do I grab onto the idea that this is the, Skynet that's going to cause the singularity and take over the world? Or do I embrace the idea that, oh, this is going to fix everything for me and I'll run everything by ChatGPT or whatever? So let's try to let's shoot for the middle, as I like to say, and say, what does this do for me? And here's this is the real focus of my message today is, what are the techniques to do that? Well, one of the most important techniques, I think, is to look at this and say, is this a tool that I'm using in my life that I'm in charge of? Or is this something that I'm expecting to guide or reshape my life in a great new way? And I know that from my experience of seeing the way that people are using this clinically, mentally, health-wise in their own lives, where they're trying to go to ChatGPT and use it for therapy purposes. And now I would say there's not even a black and white policy that I would recommend on that. So here's what I mean by that. Do I go to, like, let's just pick ChatGPT or one of those types of tools. Do I go to that and say, this tool is something I'm going to use with some of the goals I have with my own progression, my own growth, my own health, mental health particularly. And I'm going to say, hey, as I have seen people do this before recently, that are saying, okay, here's an email or a text that I'm going to send to a friend, a colleague, particularly if it touches on something that might be awkward. And they run it into they put the text of it in there and say, can you help me phrase this in a way that is not abrasive? Now, this particularly if you have maybe some emotional regulation issues that you're worried about, you have temper or something, and you're like, boy, I know that I've gotten in trouble for emails I've sent before. Can I use this as one of the tools I use to keep my job and relationship intact, or something like that, right? Or they might say, hey, ChatGPT, what are some good organizational tools that people use when they have ADHD? Essentially, you're using like Google at that sense, except from, the some of the enhanced features that you have there. It'll bring up, you can tabulate and make lists for you and that type of thing. Okay. So those are tools that I see people using it once again as a tool, that this is something that can help me with something I'm working on anyway. Now, if I go to it and say, hey, ChatGPT, why am I depressed? And you get that answer back of like, here's why you're depressed, something like that. This is where we get it. It's a little dicey. And I would love, by the way, to hear comments from anybody about how you are using these tools in your own life, particularly when it comes to your emotional and mental health. I'm really, really open because I think this is kind of the Wild West. It's new frontier. We're trying to figure it out. But if you're having long conversations that are meant to provoke or find some kind of insight that you do not already have, that's where you have to be very, very careful, because this is a feedback loop type of a technology. And it's something that as you feed things in, it does tend to say what it thinks you want to hear. That is the way that this is programmed. And if you ask it not to, it doesn't necessarily mean that it won't do that. If you say, tell me stuff I don't want to hear, then it's going to say, great, I'll try to figure out things that you want to hear that fit into the category of what you don't want to hear. So there's always going to be, there's always going to be something that's there that can create a bias or a kind of a slant to it. So if you are saying, what are some things I can use, or to then the middle ground here where we cross over is, when do I start saying, talk to me, develop my thoughts, give me some feedback, and all of a sudden something pops out that we wouldn't have thought of before. Now, is that a combination of things I said? ChatGPT knows what I want to hear that's going to make me feel better. Does it also go out there and Google a little bit of, hey, here's a calendaring tool as well, or here's a tip from an article that I'm going to say, then not tell you that it's from an article? That's another thing. We can't rely on this to be ethical in the way that it will act like, there's no malice, because this program doesn't have malice just as well as it doesn't have any emotions, to come and say, hey, why don't you try this? Or look at it this way. Now, it may not say that this came from a book or an article from, some publication a while back. It might or might not tell you that, depending on if it thinks you want to know that. Okay. So you might just think that it came up with it. And then you start down that road of where I'm having a relationship that might go beyond the bounds. I'm expecting too much from this that it cannot really provide, or it can't provide in a healthy way. So that's just a little tip. Looking at this, is this a tool, or is this me not thinking, right? How do I use a calculator? How do I use a computer program? Am I using this to do everything for me? Do I tell it to write the email for me so that it won't, have abrasiveness in it? Do I write the email, then run it through and say, can you look for parts of abrasiveness? See, I would say that second one, since you're writing the first email yourself, is more likely to be part of you developing better emotional regulation skills for yourself. The first, where you just have it write it, is similar to if you just have it write an essay for you. You're not building your essay writing skills. So there you go. And I hope that you'll find we go a lot deeper into different aspects, particularly the parts I haven't talked about today, which is why does it and how does it, and what experiences have they had interviewing people who have had full delusional experiences. So I encourage you to listen tomorrow, and also go out on YouTube or anywhere you find podcasts for the audio version and look up Suspicious Minds. Very, very cool kind of stuff that they're going into, particularly hearing firsthand people who are using this technology, and the fact that they are not judged, that people who are coming on and giving their experiences, they tend to just view them as, okay, here's what your experience is. If you say this was really, really badly dangerous, of course, they're going to talk about that. If someone's like, I have a relationship with this AI and it's really helping me, I've not heard anywhere where they have ever put anyone down for that as well. Like I said, they all are navigating this use of that technology like we all are as well. So once again, love to hear from you. You can reach out to me through the website, dwighthurst.com/contact, or just click the contact part that appears at the top of every page, I think. You can also go there, by the way, if you go to dwighthurst.com/podcast, or just straight to dwighthurst.com/support, you will find links to the ways you can support this program and help it go. As you also know, I'm sure if you've listened, we do pick a charity, local charities particularly, that we focus on every single month. And if you do decide to join our Patreon, not only do you get whatever bonus materials we have, for the patrons as well, but 50% of your donation will always go towards the charity of highlight in the month that you joined, for as long as you remain a member and as long as you are contributing. This month we're highlighting Stand In Pride. You can go to standinpride.org to learn more about this fascinating organization started by Dan Blevins. You can also follow Dan at _zombie_Dan, where he talks a lot about this nonprofit that he has founded that is focused on helping LGBTQ plus individuals who have been abandoned or had relationships severed when they come out, to find essentially stand-in family members or friends to come in, help them build legitimate, found family friendships. But also, if they have an event such as a wedding or graduation where no one's going to come, you know what? Let's find some people who are going to come and meet people that way. Dan himself has walked several people down the aisle of their weddings when their own loved one or father, whoever was going to do that, would not make themselves available to do so. And so it's a wonderful and very intriguing organization. Follow them on Instagram, go to standinpride.org and get involved directly, as well as, like I said, all the donors who join this month will also be contributing that too. But and definitely let people know about this. Oh, they have an app, by the way. If you want to get involved as an ally, or if you are looking for this kind of support, the best way to do that is find the Stand In Pride app. And it will help you in your local area to find opportunities to be a stand-in and found family member and build relationships that way, or to find that, or both. I'm on there, and it's a really cool app. And helps to really find ways to give verbal or friendship support to people. So I really like this organization since I discovered them a couple months ago. Thanks, everybody, for listening to the Monday Mental Health Tip. It's really, really good to be talking to you, and we'll be, talking to you again soon. And enjoy tomorrow's episode about suspicious minds and the effects of culture and AI on delusion. Bye-bye.